Prepare to be drawn into the shadows with Horror Triangle, where untold tales of terror come alive. Some stories lurk just beyond the trees, waiting to find you. I never thought I'd come face to face with true terror in the wilderness. It all started when my friends and I decided to go on a week-long hiking trip deep into the forest of the Pacific Northwest. The place was known for its breathtaking scenery, towering pines, and secluded trails. What we didn't know was that it was also a place that kept dark secrets. Our group consisted of 4 people: me, Sarah, Kevin, and James. We were seasoned campers and felt confident about spending a few days disconnected from civilization. We packed everything including food, tents, survival gear, and set off early one morning. The first 2 days were perfect. The weather was clear, and the scenery was more beautiful than we had imagined. Birds chirped in harmony, and the gentle rustle of leaves accompanied our journey. On the 3rd day, things started to change. We had ventured far off the beaten path to reach a hidden lake Kevin had read about online. As we moved deeper into the forest, the air grew colder, and an eerie silence enveloped us. It was strange: no birds, no insects, just the sound of our boots crunching on the forest floor. The trees seemed denser, their twisted branches forming unnatural shapes. "Do you guys feel that?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling slightly. Kevin laughed nervously. "Feel what?" "It's just weirdly quiet," she said. "Like the forest is holding its breath." James shrugged. "We're probably just in a dead zone for wildlife. Let's keep moving." As night fell, we set up camp near a small clearing. We built a fire and tried to shake off the unease. Kevin told jokes, and Sarah shared ghost stories, but there was an underlying tension none of us wanted to acknowledge. Then came the whispers. It started softly, barely audible over the crackling fire. At first, I thought it was the wind rustling through the trees, but there was no wind. "Did you hear that?" I asked. Everyone went silent, straining to listen. The whispers grew louder, indistinct but undeniably human-like. They seemed to circle our camp, coming from all directions. "Who's out there?" James shouted, standing up and shining his flashlight into the darkness. No response. Just more whispers, fading in and out like a sinister melody. Kevin tried to brush it off. "Probably just the wind," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. We decided to turn in for the night, hoping that sleep would bring some relief. But sleep was elusive. The whispers persisted, and every time I closed my eyes, I felt like someone was standing just outside my tent, watching. Around midnight, Sarah screamed. We all bolted out of our tents, flashlights in hand. "What happened?" I asked, my heart racing. "There was someone right outside my tent," she said, her voice shaking. "I saw a shadow." James and Kevin did a quick sweep of the area but found nothing. Still, the sense of being watched lingered. None of us slept that night. By morning, we were exhausted but determined to continue our hike. The whispers had stopped with the first light of dawn, and we convinced ourselves it had just been our imaginations playing tricks on us. We packed up and resumed our journey toward the hidden lake. But something was wrong. The trail we had been following seemed to vanish. Trees that we had marked the previous day were gone, as if the forest had shifted overnight. "This doesn't make sense," Kevin said, checking the map and compass. "We should be right on track." But we weren't. The forest had become a labyrinth, every direction looking the same. Panic set in as we realized we were lost. "Let's just backtrack," James suggested. "We'll find our way out." We tried, but no matter which way we went, we ended up back at the same clearing. "This isn't possible," Sarah whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. The sun was sinking again, casting long shadows through the trees. The oppressive silence returned, heavier than before. And then the whispers came back louder, more insistent. Desperation took over. We decided to make a break for it, running through the forest without any sense of direction. Branches scratched our faces, and roots threatened to trip us with every step. The whispers followed, growing into a cacophony of malevolent voices. Suddenly, Sarah tripped and fell, screaming in pain. Her ankle was twisted at an unnatural angle. "We have to stop," I said, helping her up. "No, we can't," Kevin argued. "They're getting closer." "Who?" I demanded. "Who are they?" He didn't answer, just shook his head and kept looking over his shoulder. We managed to find a small cave and decided to take shelter for the night. The entrance was narrow, hidden by thick bushes. It felt like a safe haven, at least for the moment. Inside, we huddled together, our flashlights casting eerie shadows on the walls. The whispers had stopped, but the oppressive silence was almost worse. "Do you think we'll make it out of here?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. No one answered. Sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up to a strange sound, a low, guttural growl echoing from deeper within the cave. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, shaking James awake. He nodded, his face pale. "What the hell was that?" The growling grew louder, accompanied by the sound of something heavy dragging across the ground. We pointed our flashlights toward the darkness, but the beams seemed to be swallowed by the blackness. "We need to get out of here," Kevin said, his voice trembling. We scrambled to the entrance, dragging Sarah with us. As we emerged into the cold night air, the whispers returned angry, insistent. Shadows flickered between the trees, and I swear I saw figures moving just beyond the reach of our lights. "Run!" James shouted. We ran like our lives depended on it, because they did. The forest seemed to close in around us, branches clawing at our clothes and skin. The whispers grew deafening, mingling with guttural growls and otherworldly shrieks. I don't know how long we ran, but eventually, we broke through the tree line and stumbled onto a dirt road. Headlights appeared in the distance of a ranger's truck. We flagged it down, gasping for breath and covered in scratches. The ranger looked at us with a mixture of concern and disbelief. "What happened to you folks?" he asked. "We got lost," Kevin said, his voice hollow. "There's something out there." The ranger's face darkened. "You're lucky to be alive," he said. "People go missing in those woods all the time. Most never come back." Back in civilization, we tried to make sense of what had happened, but the memories were fragmented, like a nightmare that refuses to fade. Sarah's ankle healed, but she refused to talk about the trip. James moved away, and Kevin stopped hiking altogether. As for me, I still hear the whispers sometimes late at night when the world is quiet. I don't know what we encountered in those woods, but I do know one thing: the wilderness holds secrets, and some of them are better left undiscovered. I'll never forget the weekend that changed my life. It was supposed to be a simple camping trip, just me and my two best friends, Logan and Kelvin. We'd planned to escape the noise of the city, pitch a few tents, and fish by the river deep within the Hollow Ridge woods. We were experienced campers. Or at least, we thought we were. The drive to Hollow Ridge took 3 hours, mostly winding dirt roads lined by towering pines. As we left civilization behind, excitement bubbled in our veins. The air smelled of damp earth and pine needles. The sunlight flickered through the trees, creating golden patterns on the forest floor. "This place is perfect," Logan grinned, leaning out of the window as Kelvin navigated our SUV down a narrow path. Kelvin chuckled. "Yeah, until you hear creepy ghost stories by the campfire." I rolled my eyes. "Ghosts aren't real, man. Stop trying to freak us out." Little did I know, those words would haunt me. We arrived at a clearing just before sunset. The spot was beautiful flat ground for tents, a gentle slope leading down to a crystal-clear river, and trees standing like silent sentinels around us. Birds chirped in the distance, their songs blending with the rustle of leaves. By nightfall, we had a fire crackling in the pit, casting flickering shadows on the trees. Logan passed around hot dogs on skewers while Kelvin shared a flask of whiskey. "Cheers to the perfect weekend," Kelvin said, raising the flask. "To no responsibilities and good times," Logan added. "Cheers," I agreed, grinning as I took a swig. We laughed, shared stories, and watched embers dance toward the starry sky. The peaceful atmosphere lulled us into a false sense of security. Then it started. A low, distant howl echoed through the woods. I froze, hot dog halfway to my mouth. What was that? Logan shrugged. Probably just a coyote. Kelvin snorted. Relax, Jacob. It's nature. Animals live here, remember. I tried to shake off the unease, but the woods felt different now, darker, colder, and somehow watchful. We decided to turn in around midnight. I zipped myself into my sleeping bag inside the tent and closed my eyes, listening to the gentle crackle of the dying fire. That's when I heard it. Soft footsteps. Not the random scuffle of a raccoon or deer, but deliberate, human-like steps circling our campsite. I held my breath, heart pounding in my chest. Kelvin. Logan. I whispered. No response. The footsteps stopped right outside my tent. I strained to listen, my mind racing with possibilities. Was it a park ranger? Another camper? Or something else entirely? Suddenly, the tent zipper rattled. I bolted upright, adrenaline surging through my veins. Who's there? I demanded, trying to sound braver than I felt. Silence. I grabbed my flashlight and unzipped the tent just enough to peek outside. The fire had burned down to glowing embers, casting eerie shadows across the campsite. Trees swayed gently in the breeze, but there was no sign of anyone. Taking a deep breath, I stepped out, scanning the area with my flashlight. Nothing. Maybe I'd imagined it. Shaking my head, I crawled back into the tent and forced myself to sleep. The next morning, Kelvin and Logan teased me mercilessly. You sure you didn't dream it? Kelvin laughed, flipping pancakes over the portable stove. Logan grinned. Maybe Bigfoot came to say hi. Very funny, I muttered, though a part of me still felt uneasy. We spent the day fishing by the river, hiking through dense trails, and soaking up the beauty of the wilderness. The eerie events of the previous night faded into the background. But as dusk fell, the sense of unease returned. The woods grew quieter than usual. No chirping birds or rustling leaves. Just an oppressive silence that pressed down on us. Feels weird out here tonight, Logan admitted, tossing another log onto the fire. Kelvin nodded. Yeah, it's like the woods are holding their breath. We tried to shake off the feeling, but it clung to us like a second skin. Later that night, I woke up to a strange sound. Whispering. Faint, guttural voices carried on the wind, coming from deep within the woods. I sat up, heart racing. Guys, wake up, I hissed. Kelvin groaned. What now? Listen, I urged. We all strained to hear. The whispers grew louder, closer. They didn't sound like any language I'd ever heard, twisted and distorted, like something out of a nightmare. Logan's face went pale. What the hell is that? Kelvin grabbed a flashlight. I'm checking it out. Are you crazy? I grabbed his arm. We should stay together. But Kelvin was already moving toward the trees, the beam of his flashlight cutting through the darkness. Reluctantly, Logan and I followed. The whispers led us deeper into the woods, far from the safety of our campsite. Shadows danced around us, and every snap of a twig made my nerves fray. Suddenly, the whispers stopped. Silence enveloped us like a suffocating blanket. Kelvin swung his flashlight in all directions. Where did it go? Logan shivered. Let's go back. This is messed up. I nodded. Yeah, this was a bad idea. We turned our heads back and froze. The path was gone. Trees loomed where there should have been a clear trail. Panic clawed at my throat. We came this way, right? Kelvin said, his voice wavering. I don't know, Logan whispered. Everything looks the same. Fear settled over us like a heavy fog. We were lost. Hours passed as we stumbled through the woods, calling out for help. The cold bit through our jackets, and exhaustion weighed down our limbs. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, we heard it, footsteps, not ours. They circled us, fast and relentless, like a predator stalking its prey. Kelvin shone his flashlight wildly. Who's there? No answer. Logan gripped my arm. We need to run. We bolted through the trees, branches tearing at our clothes and skin. The footsteps followed, relentless and unyielding. My lungs burned, and my legs screamed in protest, but fear drove me forward. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, the chase ended. We stumbled into a small clearing, gasping for breath. The footsteps were gone. What the hell was that? Logan panted. Kelvin shook his head, eyes wide with terror. I don't know. But we need to find our way back. Now. I agreed, though dread gnawed at my insides. Whatever was out there wasn't normal. As dawn broke, we finally stumbled back to our campsite. Relief washed over me at the sight of our tents and the smoldering remains of the fire. But something was wrong. The tents were slashed to ribbons, our gear scattered and destroyed. Logan's voice trembled. What did this do? I had no answer. My mind raced with possibilities, none of them comforting. Kelvin picked up a torn piece of fabric, his knuckles white. We're leaving. Now. We packed what little we could salvage and made our way back to the SUV, hearts heavy with fear. As we drove away from Hollow Ridge, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching us, lurking just beyond the trees. To this day, I don't know what we encountered in those woods. But one thing is certain, Hollow Ridge isn't just a place for peaceful camping. It's a place where nightmares come to life and some things are better left undiscovered.